Hi there. Thanks for joining. My name is Sarah Morellis. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor and certified life coach. And I help parents work with their neurodivergent teen to reduce unhelpful behavior patterns, increase receptivity to change, and help them grow into successful young adults. And so that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit on this video. So let's get started. So today I'm going to be talking about two very different types of parents. And the first type of parents are often stressed, overwhelmed, and just trying to get through each day. These stressed and overwhelmed parents often feel very anxious and worried about their child's future. They're often worrying about if their child's going to be able to be independent and function on their own. They worry about what's going to happen when they get older and their child no longer has anybody to rely on for support. They're worried if their young adults going to be able to function independently? Are they going to be able to get and sustain a job? Are they going to be able to sustain an independent living situation? Are they going to be able to take care of their basic needs? And so these are the questions and worries that these parents are going through. These parents are also feeling a lot of guilt and shame, often worried if they're going to be or if they are making the right decisions for their neurodivergent child. They often feel at a loss for what to do, feeling like they're making a mistake. Is my child working with the right therapist? Are they on the right medication? Are they getting the right support? They often feel shame because they're getting a lot of conflicting parenting advice. Some helpful, a lot not very helpful is often normal parenting advice to help a kid be more independent is often wrong or designed for a neurotypical individual and not the neurodivergent brain. So sometimes they're getting told, oh, just you have to implement more consequences, or you have to, you can't stop, or you have to stop enabling them. And oftentimes the parents feel frustrated, like I'm following all of this, but it's just not working. So they often feel like they're failing as a parent. The other thing is that these parents are often feeling extremely drained, burnt out, and overwhelmed. They're often balancing so many different priorities, trying to get everything done. They're trying to balance work and do a good job at work so they don't get fired. They're trying to balance other family needs, family and friends who are also needing them. They're trying to balance and sustain a healthy relationship or marriage that often feels like it's the first thing to go because all these individuals are worrying about is being able to help their child. So the marriage or the relationship suffers because everything becomes about supporting the child. And so at the end of the day, two parents end up just collapsing in bed, not having any time left over for self-care or connection. And this can be really draining and it can make parents feel really sad. And so now we'll talk about the happy parents, parents who have successful homes or peaceful homes and successful children. These are the very different type of parents. So these parents are able to be more in the moment. They're able to be mindful and they're able to enjoy actual quality time with their kid. Oftentimes, their neurodivergent kid has very specialized interests. And so instead of constantly worrying about, is my kid getting tasks done? Do I need to keep following up with them? Do I need to keep reminding them to take care of their needs, to study, to get ready, to brush their teeth, to clean their room? And they're worrying less about this because the kid is functioning more independently. And so the time that they do spend together is actually more quality, connected time. And they're able to actually enjoy time with their kid. These parents also are able to find a good work-life balance. These parents are often, like I said, competing with multiple different priorities and they're trying to balance it all, right? They're trying to balance work, relationships, friendships, other kids' needs, and the needs of their neurodivergent child. And so instead of constantly waiting by the phone to see when their kid's therapist is going to call or their school is going to call for an emergency meeting, they're able to take a step back and like breathe so that they feel confident knowing that, I'm actually able to handle all of this. I'm not as worried about my kid. So again, they're feeling way more confident about their ability to respond to their child's emotions. Often neurodivergent teens can get into a pattern, or the household, I should say, can get into a pattern where there's frequent emotional outbursts, emotional shutdowns, or withdrawal due to frustration, and it kind of cycles and repeats itself and gets reinforced. But the happy parents with peaceful homes and successful kids are able to not worry about that happening as much. They feel confident in their ability to communicate with their kid because they've learned the skills necessary to be able to have effective, healthy communication without the spiral happening after. But actually, both parties, the parent and the child, actually feeling more connected and understood. And so, what's the main difference between these two types of parents? Well, I'll tell you. These parents, the parents with peaceful homes, successful kid, feeling more peace and ease, they've really changed their approach to parenting. The parents who are happy, they're using a lesser known approach to helping their neurodivergent teen. Most often, parents are doing what is most widely known or what feels normal to do, which is let's get the kid to see a therapist, let's get them into a program, let's learn all of this parenting advice that's not really designed for their kid. And so often they're spinning their wheels trying to get the right support, but really it's not the right support. So they're really changing their approach to helping their kid. These parents are investing themselves time and energy into learning the necessary skills to help their neurodivergent child. So they're learning specialized skills to help their child. And they're changing their parental approach and household culture to one that is more widely known to be more effective with neurodivergent brains. And so, why listen to this? Why listen to me? Why are you watching my video versus somebody else's video? And I'll tell you. Like I said, I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor and certified life coach. I have over 10 years of experience working at all levels of care. So residential, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, and outpatient. And I've spent these past 10 years working with specifically this population, neurodivergent young adults and parents, supporting parents along the way. And so I've worked a lot with diagnoses like ADHD, autism, OCD, OCPD, dyslexia, tics, Tourette's, and so much more, as often anxiety and depression is co-occurring or happening at the same time. So I've worked for over 5 years at one of the US's premier programs to help neurodivergent young adults, and that's Rogers Behavioral Health. So during my time there, I really got the chance to hone my skills working with this population and working with parents to be able to really create this niche where I feel confident in my ability to help these families. And I've seen real success along the way. I've helped over 500 individuals and families develop lasting change within their home. I now own a private practice and a coaching program specifically designed to work with parents to support their kid in becoming more independent and successful and to be able to change unhelpful behavior patterns. So I know what I'm talking about. And through my time working at programs and now during my time in my individual practice, I've seen real results. In the past year alone, 17 out of 22 young adults I've seen and parents I've worked with have gone on to some major accomplishment. So these individuals have been able to go off to college, graduate high school. They've been able to obtain a job or consistent volunteer opportunity. They've been able to attain an independent living situation. They're more able to complete daily tasks without frequent reminders, doing things on their own that they weren't able to before, like brushing teeth, laundry, etc. And in the past year alone, 24 of the parents I've coached have reported improvements at home, visually seeing improvements in their child's behavior, whether it being more motivated or independent to do things on their own. And during my time in private practice, I've had an 80% success rate. And this success rate is measured by self-reports of families, parents, and individual teens, but it's also measured through assessment scores. We're seeing anxiety improving, depression improving. We're seeing less functional difficulties. We're seeing less symptoms of like OCD or ADHD. People are better able to focus. And this is all demonstrated through assessment scores. And during my time in practice and various different treatment programs, I started to notice some inconsistencies with treatment when working with these populations. And when I noticed these inconsistencies, I started to realize that a vicious cycle was taking place. We would see that the individuals, the young adults, when they were in treatment or program, they would make a lot of progress. They would demonstrate some type of change, and we would see improvement. But the moment that the kid got back home or left the program, the results kind of fell off. The kid would start to backslide, and they wouldn't be able to remember the skills that they had previously mastered in program. So oftentimes we would see parents and their kids cycling through years and years of therapy or having to go back into programs again and again. And so the kid would often cycle through many different therapists, many different programs with no long-term results. Parents would get frustrated because they feel like they're wasting time, energy, and money on program after program, not seeing the results they were hoping for. And again, that non-sustainable improvement, once they get home, it all kind of goes out the window. And so I realized that there's key differences that need to be implemented in order to maintain long-term success. We saw that in treatment programs that individual therapists or programs were not involving parents. And this could be for a multitude of reasons. One could be financially, that the treatment program was benefiting from the child not being able to maintain long-term success. So they would cycle through programs or come back through the program. So there could be financial gain. There could be limited time and resources. Therapists and programs are often overworked, and their programs are often understaffed. So there just isn't the time or the resources to really coach or hone in on helping the parents learn the same skills that their kids were learning. Also, there's the possibility of low memory retention for neurodivergent teens. It's often the case that with diagnosis like ADHD, autism, OCD, and anxiety, that the memory retention is not the same. It often requires a lot of visuals, repetition, and skills implementation through practice. And so once that structure goes away from the program and the kid returns home, it all goes out the window because they're not able to recall, and the rate of memory retention and recall it's not the same. So they end up backsliding because they don't have that same reminder system or structure in place. And the household's not necessarily operating at the basic level of skills use that needs to be implemented for lasting change. What they're learning in program is not being implemented at home because the parents don't know what they're learning, and they're not really creating that culture of structure, of safety, of skills that is necessary to help their kid become more independent. So we learned that it's more helpful to coach the parents specifically to use the skills necessary, the vital skills, to create a lasting impact of change in their child's behavior and long-term success. And so through this realization, I made it my personal mission through my coaching program to focus specifically on working with the parents so the parents can develop the vital skills needed to help a neurodivergent teen succeed. And so with my program, I work specifically with the parents to teach them the absolute necessary skills to create that culture of lasting change. And to demonstrate some of the successes I've had working with these populations, I'm going to talk about a few case studies or examples of children and parents I've worked with that just go to show the success and lasting change that can be had. So the first case that I'm going to talk about is Theo. Theo is about 17 years old. He is about to go off to college. Theo has a diagnosis of autism and OCD. And with the OCD, he experiences a lot of compulsions, often spending hours in the bathroom, re-washing hands, re-wiping, and the compulsions are really getting in the way of him being able to take care of necessary tasks like homework, chores, or other things that he needs to do to take care of himself. So his parents names are Shelby and Jacob, and they're really worried. They're worried about Theo's future as he will be going to college soon. They worry if Theo will be able to be independent, if he'll be willing to do his studying and assignments on his own. So oftentimes he won't complete homework or he won't complete exposure assignments given by his therapist due to unwillingness or the fear and anxiety associated with the OCD. And so they're worried if he's going to be able to function without their frequent reminders. So over my time, about a year working with Theo's parents, we started to get some real change in Theo's behavior. Coaching parents were seeing change in Theo's behavior. He was able to start to complete tasks on his own with way less reminders. He started at brushing his teeth 0 times a week to eventually 3 or 4 times a week on his own. And then from 4 times a week to 7 times a week on his own with very infrequent reminders from parents. They started to notice Theo was studying more on his own. He was engaging more in his interests. Now, Theo also really wanted to date or get a girlfriend, but he was often afraid of social situations. He was afraid of rejection or fear of feeling shame. But they noticed that Theo was putting himself out there more. He was starting to make plans or say yes to plans from friends. And so now parents are feeling way more confident about his ability to motivate and function and even socialize. So Theo's parents are really feeling proud of the progress that Theo has made. Another individual whose parents I've coached is Mandy. And now Mandy has a diagnosis of ADHD, and this makes it really, really difficult for Mandy to focus or concentrate on studying for tests, and it makes it really difficult for her to socialize as well. Mandy would often express an extreme disinterest in socializing with friends, either thinking that it just was unnecessary or not of interest, and it would oscillate then to, well, even if I did, I would just be rejected, so what's the point? So Mandy would often get really dysregulated and shut down when parents were telling Mandy to change, telling Mandy she needs to study, she needs to put her phone down. She would spend a lot of time playing games or on her phone. She would get really, really upset. She didn't like feeling controlled. And so she would even threaten self-harm and threaten suicide because she got so upset. So understandably, Mandy's parents were extremely worried about Mandy. They were afraid to push her too much because of her threats of self-harm. And so they didn't want to push her over the edge. So they kind of felt like they were walking on eggshells. But working with Mandy's parents were then able to learn the necessary skills to be able to have effective interactions with Mandy in a way that doesn't escalate or cause Mandy to shut down. And over time, slowly, Mandy was able to function more independently. She decided to study on her own with very infrequent reminders. She would study, put down her phone. She even scheduled an appointment at her school to receive study and test accommodations for her ADHD. So she was able to do that. She now has implemented accommodations for test taking and studying at her school. And then she started having more social interactions. She decided to join a theater club and a film club at her school. So now she goes there weekly and has a few friends that she's made. And so change really is possible for people like Mandy, to be able to kind of turn it around and be able to focus and have success. And finally, we'll talk about Daniel and Daniel's parents, having worked with them. So Daniel had a diagnosis of autism and OCPD, or obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And so that meant that Daniel had more of a rigid thought process, I'd say more than the average person. He was very stuck when things felt or got unfair. So he loved to go to the gym, but he would get very upset when he saw people at the gym not doing the right thing, when he saw them not using the equipment properly or wiping it down. He would get upset when he saw kids in like an adult's only, gym. And he would get angry and he would have to really, really fight the urge to yell or to tell people at the gym to fix things or put equipment away properly. And this transferred to home. Daniel was very rigid with his parents' behavior. He would often yell or get upset with parents if they moved things that weren't supposed to be moved, if they did his laundry incorrectly or didn't do dishes the right way or load the dishwasher. He would get really upset with parents. That often left parents feeling like they were walking on eggshells, not knowing what to do and feeling scared to speak up. So they just ended up accommodating his behavior. And through almost a year of working with Daniel's parents, his parents started to slowly build confidence in how to respond to Daniel. Over time, they started to learn the necessary skills to be able to communicate with Daniel in a way that was more effective and calm. And they eventually started to feel comfortable expressing how his behaviors or thoughts were making them feel. They started to see changes and improvements in Daniel's behavior. When he went to the gym, he wasn't getting as reactive. At home, when things were misplaced or not going according to plan, they were able to see Daniel implementing skills to take a step back and self-regulate before engaging in a conversation. And so it became a household culture of regulation and safety and effective communication so that, Daniel can live his life with not as much stress and engage in healthy interpersonal relationships. He was able to engage in projects with other people and not get as upset when they weren't pulling their weight. So he also followed his interest in drumming, and now he plays with a band. He's drumming. He has friends, and he's able to emotionally regulate in a way that he wasn't previously able to. And now that we went through a few case studies or examples of parents who I've worked with, now we're going to talk about what to do or hear what effective parents are doing that ensures growth at home to ensure long-term success for their neurodivergent teen. So let's talk about what makes an effective home for a neurodivergent teen. The first thing we're going to talk about, and the first thing that parents are doing, they are seeing results from learning the vital emotion regulation skills needed to take one's home from on edge to stable and nurturing, and are key to any parenting approach actually working. So they're creating an environment of emotion regulation. And so with that means that parents must learn emotion regulation skills first to be able to implement that and model that emotion regulation for their child. And so if the parent doesn't learn the necessary emotion regulation skills, the arguments, the emotional shutdowns or outbursts are just going to stay the same. Right? It's for effective communication to happen, parents need to learn how to emotionally regulate so that they can have an effective conversation and not trigger that shutdown or overwhelm. And there's real data, there's evidence to prove the effectiveness and benefit of emotion regulation for everyone, not just neurodivergent teens, but at neurodivergent individuals especially. There's so much data to prove that emotion regulation helps in all areas of life. We need emotion regulation skills to maintain success and sustainability at a job or wherever someone works. We need emotion regulation skills for healthy relationships, healthy communication and support in relationships. We need it for independent functioning, taking care of ourselves. If we're constantly on edge or we're constantly worrying or getting stuck in a thought process, maybe of unfairness, we're not able to focus on the basic tasks that we need to do in order to feel better, like brushing teeth, taking a shower, taking walks, etc. And so it really improves all areas of functioning and our life. And they're absolutely necessary for parents to learn how to do to help their child learn how to do the same. The second thing parents are creating a home environment that focuses on radical openness to learning new things. So they're helping their child to be more resilient, flexible, and more able to be happy and successful by learning radical openness. And so radical openness is being able to challenge our experience or challenge our perception of reality. It's often the case that our neurodivergent teens are getting kind of stuck in their thought process that things need to be a certain way, right? They often feel a sense or get in the habit of wanting to engage in over-controlled behavior. That means things have to be a certain way. People have to say the right thing or do the right thing. Otherwise, something bad's going to happen or they're going to feel overwhelmed. And so we need to be able to recognize that and respond to it and ask ourselves, what can we learn here? Is there something new that we can learn? And the cost of a neurodivergent young adult not being able to learn radical openness is that they're going to have a much harder time working, sustaining relationships, studying, engaging at school, because often things don't work out the way we want them to, right? People say and do things that we don't like, or we get negative feedback that we don't like, or situations don't go according to plan. And that can be really distressing for anyone, for us, and in particular, our neurodiverse young adult. So being able to be radically open and being able to ask ourselves, even though it didn't go according to plan, what can I learn here? And being open to learning new things. The third thing that parents are using the right approach that fosters mental flexibility. And mental flexibility is a key skill that neurodivergent teens need to take into adulthood, and they're key to minimizing shutdowns, emotional flooding, and overwhelm. So mental flexibility requires us to shift perspectives and adapt to change. And it is, in addition, completely necessary to having an open mind. It's often the case that we get stuck in what we might call a fixed mindset, parents especially included, fixed mindset that things have to go a certain way, right? We can only get to a positive outcome through this one way. So often our neurodivergent kids are not open to doing new things. They're not open to participating in experiences without planning first or feeling a sense of control. So they often tend to self-isolate or engage in repeated behaviors and actions that feels safer, more comfortable, but does not lead to lasting change or impact. And then we see our neurodivergent teens and ourselves often go into fatalistic mindset, meaning that it just feels hopeless and they're not even willing to try. What's the point if I'm just going to be disappointed? So that fixed and that fatalistic mind can really combine to not engaging in any new experiences or behavior that might be helpful. So it's important we learn and we help our neurodivergent teen shift to a flexible, open mind. So again, being flexible is being able to be open to new perspectives, to feedback, and to change. It's about participating without planning, not making assumptions about how things will go, but it really requires parents to model being flexible, to really trust and engage in trying new things, to allow ourselves to experience something different, something new. And before we know it, we might be able to make new friends or have new experiences or try food that we might actually like. But the cost of not having a flexible mind really, really is detrimental and will create a huge sense of isolation and unhappiness. So flexibility is really, really important for young adults to become successful. And the fourth and final thing that parents are doing, they're effectively coaching their teen on how to develop and sustain close friendships and relationships. Now, this cannot be stressed enough. Relationships are absolutely vital for long-term success. And often we find our neurodivergent teen, really actually craving and wanting close personal relationships or intimacy, but really sometimes being afraid of it or shutting down. That's because they don't want to feel the pain of potential rejection or shame or doing or saying the wrong thing. So they often retreat, even though they want to. Their value is to have close personal relationships. They may have no interest whatsoever, or they just may be afraid and not know it or not be able to communicate that. But it's important that we model and teach our kids, our neurodivergent kids, that vulnerability is required. Being open to new experiences and letting go of control is really imperative to sustaining long-term lasting relationships. And even if our loved one has absolutely no interest in relationships, it is necessary for effective living and independent living, because we do rely on people, right? Whether it be getting groceries at the store, being able to get our medicine and doctor's appointments, being able to sustain and maintain relationships at work, to have a job. But also, it's always important for everyone to have at least one person they can go to in times of distress. And so the cost of not learning effective communication or interpersonal skills is really astronomical in the long term. And we want to feel confident. We want to feel at ease that our child is capable of engaging in healthy relationships long term. And so on that note, let's review what we covered in today's video. So we learned that parents must use a lesser known approach to therapy. And that is one that is specifically designed for neurodivergent young adults, not doing the same thing over and over again. That is really well known, but using a lesser approach to help their child. We learned that parents must invest time and energy themselves to understand how to help their neurodivergent kid. Right? It's not enough that the kid goes to therapy or a program and learns the skills on their own, right? They need that constant reinforcement. They need a change in culture at home, and they need to see parental guidance and modeling of behavior for that change to actually take place. So the parents have to learn these skills too. And we're learning that, parents have to create that culture to be more effective at home. And they need to understand these 4 vital skills: emotion regulation, radical openness, mental flexibility, and healthy relationship skills for long-term success. And now that you know the 4 vital skills, and I encourage you to go use these skills on your own, or try to implement them at home. But if you are someone who likes a little extra support in implementing skills, um, you can definitely talk to me. If you see a link beneath this video, we can schedule a phone call to talk more. If you see the link, that means the doors to my program are currently open, and we could discuss if a program would be something that would be helpful to give you extra guidance in helping your home implement these skills. And in the coming weeks or so, I will be accepting 3 new parents or individuals into my coaching program. So space is limited. And if you do decide to join the program, over the next several months, we'll work together to implement the vital skills needed to help your neurodiverse teen reduce unhelpful behavior patterns, increase receptivity to change, and basically help them grow into happy, successful individuals. Again, if you'd like to apply for the program, please use the link below to schedule a time for us to talk. And please do so even if you just want to ask questions. I'm available. And I do hope you reach out, as I would love to get to know you, and I look forward to meeting you. Thanks for tuning in.